Welcome back to Mindset Merch. I'm your host, Peter.
And I'm Max.
And today we got a really interesting podcast for you. So today's technically our second podcast, am I right?
Yep. So this is technically our second one. Our first one was our introduction. So this is really like the first real one. I hope you guys tuned into the introduction. But if not, totally fine. Happy to have you guys here.
Yeah, so today we got some really interesting things to talk about, like I just said briefly earlier. So the very interesting thing that we're going to be talking about is social media, but Max and I have kind of a compendium of different subtopics on social media and things that we find very interesting and we talk about on our day-to-day basis and how they affect us and others and kind of just the societal effects on a large scale. You know?
Yeah. And the first thing we're going to talk about is different social media platforms and how they can impact how different people view them and interact with them differently. And that really just leads us into talking about where you guys will even be listening on this. We've got Spotify, YouTube,
and soon to be Apple Music. We're just still figuring out the logistics of that.
Hopefully some TikTok clips, some Instagram clips.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say is that leads us into what we almost are kind of considering ourselves, but what we would consider obviously people that are more well known as influencers and the biggest impact that they have on the society, and especially our generation, our age.
Yeah, exactly. I think that everybody, I mean, I don't know this exact statistic, but there is a large sum of people on social media. I think it'd be really interesting if we could find out that at some point, and then that maybe we'll bring that up in another podcast and kind of do a little pull and parallel from what we're talking about today. But I don't think a lot of people, even sometimes ourselves, realize the influence that other people have on ourselves, specifically people of mass influence, right? And I think sometimes the people don't even realize themselves that maybe if they're going to say something about a product or they're going to say something about something they believe, they don't realize that they're going to be a large sum of people who follow them and really idolize them or maybe look up to them that are going to maybe not second guess or take that to themselves, and they're just, since they're from a place of authority, well, in their eyes, since they are a big influencer, they're just going to take that and run. And I think that that's a very powerful tool, but it's also a very scary one if it's used incorrectly. And that's something we talk about on a long time.
Yeah.
A long time, but we talk about it a lot. We talk about just the influence that somebody like maybe Sam Sulek has, right? That's somebody that Max and I both are very into, in the sense that we're both into fitness, and he's a very authentic person, kind of what we talked about in our intro, about how we want to be authentic because specifically like Sam Sulek, the authenticity is something that a lot of people are really drawn to. It's something that you don't really see on the day-to-day on maybe Instagram or TikTok. You see a lot of the times there's people with these facades.
And a lot of that is because, and Peter and I were talking about this, is it's a lot of people on social media tend to try to put out their top 10%. I mean, even us, when we do something, if we really fuck up the intro or something like that, we're like, okay, we got to reshoot that.
Of course.
Obviously, once we get into it, if we fuck up anything, we're going to keep it the same. But in general, a lot of people, when they post something that they know other people are going to see, they want to show their top 10%. And those high up influencers that we're going to be talking about, they're even more to that degree because you're just naturally, humans are trying to show the best version of themselves to other people. It's not even like a show off thing. You just want to look the best. I guess kind of a show off thing.
Yeah, I think it just goes, if you could give it a word, it's the presentation. You know? Real quick, I'm not trying to cut you off, but I was thinking about, as you were saying it, let's say you're going to a party or you're going to go out to eat. I mean, most people, there obviously are people who just kind of like, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, even I do that sometimes, but even then, I'm not going to be wanting to wear fucking cum stained shirt. Yeah, like a stained shirt in my pajamas and go out. I'm gonna have some level of decency.
Exactly.
And then obviously when I'm going to go out to people, I want them to look highly of myself. I'm gonna go put on nice clothes. I'm gonna present myself nicely.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly that. But to the degree that these people feel, it's so much higher than what we feel. I don't even think
100%.
a lot of people on their, I don't want to say average people, but average people can't understand the level of draw that they personally have, that they need to feel this presentation for everyone to see because they realize they have that big of a following.
And a lot of that for those people is I mean, that's a lot of pressure on them for how they're seen, but also it's a lot of pressure on them just for how they portray themselves to the public.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk a lot about a lot of these influencers are almost being like idolized, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's to some degree it's good. I mean, for certain people and certain goals and interests and everything, it's good. But at the same time, it can also be kind of scary just for the fact that, there's, I mean, a lot of people that view that type of lifestyle as like an ideal lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and something we're going to be trying to be as unbiased as possible, but as well give the nuances to each topic that we're going to be talking about, because that's something I wanted to just bring up, because that can be used for good or bad, you know? If you have someone who is in an amazing position, and I think I think Max and I both understand there's no problem with idolization as long as you vet out who you're idolizing, and as well when you're idolizing them, you understand the nuances that come with it, right? You understand that exactly as Max had said, that these people are putting out the top 1% of, or maybe 10% of who they are, and they're already in the top 10% of the demographic, or maybe 1% of the whole world. And so it sets a very bad precedent and goal. Not bad, I actually want to say, because it can be a great motivator.
It's like a bad norm, though.
Yeah, a bad norm. I think that's also the problem for people is they view that as, oh, well, that's a normal lifestyle and I can achieve that without any hard work. I can stay the person I am. And then they get to this point where they're so dissatisfied with where they are because they see people who have gone so far in life, and it's just a false perception of reality, and that's where it gets dangerous. But then if you use that as, and personally what I use it to, if I see someone I truly idolize who's in the position I'm at, I'm like, okay, that's a dope one. I know that I can get there, but as well, what are the things that I can take from what they say? Hopefully that they're giving the game, or maybe they're saying, okay, well, I'm not going to give you the exact game, but here's the personal self-development things I went through. And then I can say, hey, I can mirror that, but obviously use that in moderation and understand that I'm not going to be exactly them, but I can use them to the best of my ability.
You can see their thinking and their lifestyles, and like we said, because they're showing their top percent. If you're able to replicate that percent, or you try to replicate that lifestyle to that degree, like, then you can definitely get places. And that's why influencers are so important and can be very beneficial in some ways, is because, like you said, you can find people with similar like-minded goals and interests and places where you want to be in life, to be able to then, like you said, take that as motivation. But the other thing, like you were saying, is it can also be kind of bad because some people can get unsatisfied with their life because of how others look. And that's where it's like, you gotta understand it. It's, you're looking at the top 10% of the top 10%.
Exactly. Well, as well too, I think that, I mean, I'm gonna use specifically the fitness industry as an example. Is you'll have people who are at the top 10% of their industry, or the top 10% of the physical well-being of people, and probably 1% actually with a lot of these people. But then they're not natural. There are people who, and this is what's really sad nowadays, they're putting on a facade. And so it's so weird nowadays where the people who are natural are held higher. Well, they're also just authentic. They're able to say, hey, I'm not natural. I'm not taking steroids, or I am natural and I've been in an industry and not taking it. But there's these people who lie and they say, oh, yeah, you can get like me, or this is exactly what you need to do, and then they take out the 20 years of steroid abuse and all that. And I'm not saying that working your ass off and getting to the position you'd like to be, and not that you can just take steroids one day and become 260 pounds lean and 5% body fat, because it takes hard work, dedication, and effort. But it sets an unrealistic goal for a lot of people, and it skewers what reality actually is. And then as well too, you're then promoting a drug for people that don't understand the effects over a long-term basis, and it's just unhealthy on a long-term scale, and as well on a short-term, because people may just say, oh, I want to be like Sam Sulek, even though he doesn't promote it and doesn't say, hey, don't do this. They may idolize him, be like, oh, I want to run a cycle, and then they don't understand it, and they do it, and it can be terrible and detrimental for their whole life.
And I was going to say, even just in general, like steroids, not steroids, like models, like athletes, all these people that are naturally going to get more views for their bodies because of how much they've worked on it and stuff. It makes some people, I feel like there's two types of people, obviously. Like, there's some people that are motivated by that and like, wow, I want that. There's also people that are like, get like almost depressed from like seeing that, because they're like, damn, I want that. And it's almost so in their face. I mean, you can even talk about like girls, bro. Like you can't even, like I feel like most guys couldn't even go on their TikTok or their Instagram like discovery without just seeing girls because it's just so thrown in your face and it's so liked by so many guys that it's like I know that there's girls and I've heard girls talk about this where it's like they feel bad about themselves because they aren't looking like these models that all these guys are looking at all the time. It's like it's giving a false. I mean, this is another thing we wanted to go into on was relationships and everything over social media but it gives like a false hope of like actually like well one for guys like in most ways. I mean, sure you can go out and find a girl as beautiful as these girls out there, 100%. But it's sad to see that girls are feeling like down and out about it because of the way that they're being not pedestalized, not idolized, but pedestalized.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing too is what it is doing is it's creating a much smaller market for the guys that I'm not going to say you shouldn't be attracted to your partner because obviously you're going to be attracted to your partner first. Then you're going to find out, hey, I actually really connect with this person. I want to have a long lasting relationship with them. But it's incredibly shallow to think from the very get go that you're only going to look for a single one type of woman in the sense of like, oh, I want, like if we used a quantification scale, you're like, oh, I only want a 10, nothing else. I'm not going to talk to even a 7 if she even comes in my way. It's like, okay. Well, that's terrible. You need to be open to the possibilities because that girl could have been maybe your wife and you never knew it.
Oh, yeah.
Just because you're so hungry for this single type of woman. Not to say that if you have a type that you should be shamed for it. But at the same time, and something that I want to kind of touch on, and this kind of relates to the relationship type, is what you were thinking about too. Is it kind of goes into this skewering of reality of what's real because one, those girls are wearing a ton of makeup. Not that makeup is bad, but they're wearing a ton of makeup. They're in perfect lighting, and that goes into the same thing with fitness. Where they're in perfect lighting, they flushed all the water out of their body.
Yep.
They're lean as they possibly can be. They maybe have a push-up bra, or some guy has just pins so his muscles look bigger or something like that, and they have they're in the top 10%, and then they're showing their top 1% of the 1%. So they're showing them at their peak percent, and then it sets.
Sorry, not to cut you off. And then that's pushed everywhere because obviously the better. I don't want to say like the better the content is, but you get what I'm saying. The better the body is, or whatever, for the guy or for the girl, the more that's going to be liked and pushed and everything. So like that's just being shown as more of a normal because it's being spread out a lot more. But sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. Well, I also think then it really skewers the dating market and what men perceive as the norm for what the type of girl that they need and how their relationship needs to be. And what I'm going to say too is we were going to talk about porn and its effects on relationships and men and women over a long time scale as well as short time scales and how it affects the mentality as well as the physical and mental health of men and women because I think that's something that it's not taboo, but in a way it is because everyone knows that pretty much everyone at some point in their life has watched porn, and yet no one really wants to talk about the effects that are so heavily evident within society on a day-to-day basis. You can even see it.
Oh, 100%.
And what I was going to say on the whole porn thing is the skewing of reality in relationships is so evident when you see males and females. I'm going to say specifically males because you got to keep guys accountable. Accountability is something that we need to keep for men and women.
Yeah.
But I think men are losing accountability at a rapid pace, and it's incredibly scary. But what I was going to touch on is how these men will watch a video of a girl having sex with a guy, and it will be a very unrealistic idea of what a sexual interaction will be like, as well as the fact that they think that their girl needs to be doing all this, their girl needs to look like this, she needs to bend his every will, it needs to be this raunchy, rough interaction, and it as well, it desensitizes them to sexual interactions in the first place, but it as well sets a very odd and scary idea of how relationships should be based on.
Yeah, and I was going to say, naturally, it kind of changes the way that I feel like a lot of these guys that have porn addictions, or even just like the average guy now, because like you said, almost everyone's watched porn in some point of their life.
Yeah.
And especially guys can get addicted to that thing, that shit, just like drugs. I mean, we've talked about that a lot. We can touch on that. But it, like you said, it gives that false sense of what sex is like, not only for expectations for what it's like, but then also it changes the way they view it, and the way that it's more of a pleasure thing and less of an emotional thing.
Most definitely.
And I mean, you and I are very. Everyone has different views on this, and I'm not hating on whatever way you have sex or how
I want to
you
make it
view
really apparent and really quick before we touch on this, because this can be a very sensitive topic for, I think, a couple people and maybe a large base of our viewers. We're never trying to tell you what to do, and this is something we said in the intro. So if you want to look back, you can kind of see how we're wanting to present this to you guys. This is just personally what we believe, and this is something. These are the consensuses we've come to after self-reflection and kind of back and forth coming to this. We're not going to tell you if it's right or wrong. We just want to explain our view, what we think maybe if you're going through this, what you can do and get better from it, and you take it as you will. And never feel like we're attacking you guys.
Yeah, and like we said in the intro, if you guys ever have differing opinions about it, we'd love to hear your comments about it.
Exactly.
But yeah, what I was saying was like, obviously, no matter however you view sex, completely fine. I mean, like that's your life. But for Peter and I, it's more of like an emotional thing. Like we've talked about a lot of times, it's like you're almost giving a part of yourself to that person. At least that's how we view it. So when you view it as how porn is and how a lot of guys have those expectations, it's seen more as a pleasure and it's seen more as an experience. I mean, it's obviously both ways are an experience.
Yeah.
But it's seen more as a pleasure thing. And like you said, like the girl bends at everything that the guy says and whatever. Or you can even go dive down the rabbit hole with so many of these guys who have porn addictions that just get into just crazy freaky shit that it's like, I mean, it's just like, that's just not... One, it's not normal. It's not the average. And two, you just can't like naturally be seeking that. And if that's truly what you want, go for it. Like, like I said, I'm nowhere to judge the type of kinks or stuff you're into.
Yeah.
But it's bad that that's seen as more of a norm.
Exactly. Well, the other thing too is what he was talking about. What it does is it one pedestalizes women in a very twisted sense, in the sense that I almost feel that these men and boys that have porn addictions look at women as, obviously they look at them as an object in of themselves, because they're removing in almost all these videos, they're removing the personality from the woman. They're making her seem as like an obsolete kind of sex object, in the sense that, you guys have ever read, I doubt a lot of you have, but maybe the women have, Handmaid's Tale. It's a very interesting book. But it kind of talks about how women are used in a procreative, just incubator sense, that they're just in these, it talks about like a post-American society and how it fell, and that there were a lot of people that the whole society practically fell, and they used women as incubator. It was very interesting, but it kind of talks about how they only looked at women as incubations, and you just have sex with them, then they make the babies, and they have no freedom. And I'm not saying that that's exactly what porn presents women as, but I feel over a long period of time, and as well as people get farther down the rabbit hole and they get into weirder and weirder stuff, it
trends more in that direction.
Yeah, and it warps their perception of what the normality is, and it warps their perception, and I think it disincentivizes men and women to create long-lasting relationships. Yeah. And it as well... One, ruins your ability to have erections. It'll give you ED, but as well too, it desensitizes you to the idea of something that I think is so sacred and so special. You don't have to even get religious or spiritual, but you have to think that if you can think about pretty much anything, if you're giving up a slice of pizza, right, and your sexual connection with someone is a pizza, every time, even if you're giving like a tenth of a slice, that's a good bit. And then over time, once you give 2 or 3 slices, 2 or 3 partners, you're like, oh crap, I'm missing 30% of my pizza. Crap. And by the same time, I think if everyone really thinks about it, sex is a reaffirmation of the love and the connection that you already have with the person, and the relationship that you already have with your partner, your significant other, whoever it is. And if you're affirmating something that isn't there, you're again giving something up of yourself. And it's something so vulnerable and so special, and I think it's very sad that a lot of people are giving it up so easily. I mean, but that goes into hookup culture and how social media perpetuates that, and how it's detrimental for both men and women, because I think if anything, they're both viewing the other side as less.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to go into. It's a perfect segue. Like how the porn industry, OnlyFans, even just even just normal posts, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can go on TikTok and scroll, and eventually you'll get to somebody that's just trying to promote their OnlyFans on these normal accounts, and guys get so hooked by it. It's like it's one of those things that like ticks in your brain as a guy. And now it's for me, it's like, why is this ticking? Like this should not be something that's like, oh, maybe I will check it on that. Like, no, bro. Like,
exactly.
It shouldn't be something like, this is somebody that I've never met in my life. It's just a random person. But I was gonna say, like, going back to like the objectifying thing, that's one of the biggest problems that I feel like is with the porn industry and OnlyFans is like, obviously we want like, it's hard because the girls, I can completely understand it because some girls can make really good livings from it. And I don't want to, obviously, I would never tell you how to, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say this kind of reminds me of an MLM. Now that I really think about it, OnlyFans in of itself is almost an MLM.
Honestly, yeah, multi-level marketing.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
But, sorry, continue.
No, but I was saying, like, in some way, I can understand why girls do it. I mean, they can make a lot of money for it. But all the people that have problems with it, and I mean, for a lot of the guys, like, you got to understand, like, the guys are the ones that are giving the market for it.
Perfect.
It's you can't even put for the people that don't like OnlyFans, the people that don't like porn, and I mean, I would consider myself decently in that group. Like, I feel like it's harming society more than it's helping.
Of course.
Obviously it's helping a lot of people, a lot of girls, even a lot of guys are making a lot of money. But the problems, the outcomes from it are not great, especially over time. And the problem is we're making a market for it. Like, you can't even put majority of the blame on these creators because it's like they're not the ones creating the market for it. They're just providing the content.
Well, yeah, exactly that. And I mean, this kind of goes into what we're talking about, the nuance of a lot of things is if you're going to demonize the women for posting their whatever online and they're posting videos of them doing God knows what, right? You have to, again, demify the men who are feeding into this.
If not even more, dude. Like,
I feel like most definitely. There's not, if not more. I think at least personally, I think you have to.
Yeah.
Because you have to keep the men accountable as well. There are females that want to watch guys do weird stuff, right? I mean, there's both sides of the coin, but at the same time, it's the same way how. I don't know if I can draw the parallel here. I was going to say to drug addicts, but at the same time. If you have a market for it, you have to say, people, why are you doing this? Why are you spending $45 to watch a girl on a phone? You're cucking yourself out. If you want to really think about this, and this is something that's really helped me think about it, is if you guys know what a cuck is, it's somebody who gets off to watching other people have relations. What you're doing is you're watching a phone screen. You're not watching anything physical.
Yeah.
You're watching pixels. And it's connecting the synaptic nerves or whatever, the nerves in your brain, so that you get aroused, and then you're pleasuring yourself to a video. I don't know if you really break it down, which we can draw a parallel onto this later about how being very conscious of your actions and what that does and how it really affects your actions over long term, especially with social media and short-term dopamine things, which I think we're going to segment into that right after this. But you're pleasuring yourself to a video on a phone. I don't know. When you really think about that, I cannot feel any other feeling other than disgust.
Yeah.
When I'm thinking about that. And something that he's touched on, and I think he
touch exactly what I'm about to say.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even need to say it. Well, I was going to say something that Max and I have used a lot in our day-to-day lives to really kind of influence our behaviors, but Max said it perfectly, is think about your actions on a day-to-day basis. And think about specifically if you're somebody who jacks off or... I don't want to say like if you're the female version of pleasuring yourself on a day-to-day basis on maybe 2 to 3 times, right? Think about, maybe you don't have your grandma in your life anymore, but let's say she was still alive, right? And you were talking to her, and you had to be brutally honest about what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Explain your day-to-day, everything.
Everything from waking up from in the morning to going to sleep at night, right? And imagine having to tell your grandma, your mother, your dad, I beat my dick 5 times a day, or like, or I watch whatever videos, right? Or I'm doing this or that, and I do it 3 times a day, and I do it when I wake up, when I'm maybe on my break at work, and then before I go to bed. think about how they look at you. Think about how they think of you.
Dude, sorry, go.
No, just continue. Yeah.
And yeah, I was gonna say, and that goes for like anything. Like we're not even not just porn. Like you could go with even just like, oh yeah, I sit in my bed and scroll my phone for 3 hours. Like if and the reason why I brought this, why I've talked to Peter so much about this is like it's something that's really helped me be able to self-reflect on a lot of my life. It's because like if you have anything like Peter said, if you had to explain your whole life to, or your daily life to your grandparents, your mom, your dad, whatever. Obviously your mom and dad will be a little more understanding of it compared to your grandparents.
Yeah, of course.
Or in most senses, but if you feel embarrassed or like almost like you don't want to tell them something, then I feel like that's something you got to self-reflect on, because in some ways, even if your brain doesn't initially think it during it, when you're reflecting on it in that way, there's something that's triggering your brain that's being like, yeah, I don't know if that's right.
Of course.
And that's where you have to self-reflect and be like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, or maybe I should do this in a different way, or maybe like I can be doing something better with my time.
Of course.
And that kind of leads into the biggest thing with, I think, porn addictions is, bro, it's just a lot of people that like just naturally will just do it in their free time. I know we've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you have like that, respectfully, I mean, do whatever you want. But how I see it is, if you have that much free time to jerk off three times a day, like,
buddy, you're doing something wrong.
One, your brain should naturally be going to that when you're like, oh shit, I have some free time. Low-key, I should just beat my dick. Like, that's not what you should naturally be going to. But two, I think of it as like, bro, if that's naturally, like, if my brain is going to that because I'm so bored and I have nothing else to do or whatever, like, I gotta fill my day. Like,
of course.
Like, and naturally, the more you fill your day, like, the less that is ever going to happen.
Of course. And well, I was gonna say that exactly too. I think the more you fill your day, it doesn't, not just filling it with bull crap, right? In the same way that you don't want to fill your diet with bull crap if you're trying to be leaner or you're trying to get bigger muscles, right? You're not gonna fill your day with pizza and soda and cookies and all that bullshit, right? You're gonna be filling it with clean meats. You're going to be filling it with vegetables, and you can draw vegetables to positive activities, meats to fulfilling and gratifying things that you're doing that take time and effort, right? And if you're doing that, and if, I can genuinely attest to this, and Max can too as well, if you have had a day where you woke up when you know you needed to, you did everything you know you needed to, maybe even you went a little bit beyond that, right? And you pushed yourself and saw what was possible, and then you are back on your bed, right? And it may be 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. You're not gonna feel the need to jack off, right? You're gonna sit there and you're gonna be content with your day, and you're gonna feel, hey, I really did what I was supposed to. And that feeling, I think, if anything, it's better than any pleasure you can get from just jacking off, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's what's the word? It's contentment almost. I think it's contentment, and it's fulfillment, knowing that you did what you needed to and you did it to the best of your ability. If you did, even if you didn't, but know you tried, right? And well, I'm gonna kind of stagnate because we have a couple more things we want to talk about. And we have somewhat of a time limit because we also don't want this to be 3 hours.
Yeah, super long.
But the last thing is, and I'm not trying to say that it's an easy thing to break, like with any addiction. And one of the craziest, and if you really break down why porn addiction is such a hard thing to do, especially for men, is because it feeds on one of the most vulnerable and on one of our most innate natures within the human body, especially for men, is the nature of procreation. Men are always going to want to fuck, because it's in our nature to want to have a partner and gonna want to have another child, because procreation is the end of life, in the sense that we are meant to have a next generation and continue and further the species, right? And so that's why it's such a hard thing to knock, because you're literally trying to go against your biology, and you're trying to say, hey, even though I want to, I shouldn't.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to do, and that's why we don't want to make it sound like it's just a cut and dry, hey, think about if you were talking to your grandma about jacking off. It's like, it's not that easy. And it takes something, like with any addiction. Every time you're presented with the opportunity, you got to say, hey, mate, I'm not going to do it this time. If you say next time is going to when you say next time. And then next time. And then you just continue, and you'll never have that next time.
Yeah, and I was going to say a lot about that is, like, you can compare. I know for me, like, my sexual experiences compared to my single experiences with jacking off, like, the differences in the feeling too of, like, for jacking off, like post-nut clarity, dude, I feel like a lot of people need to be thinking in that mindset before they do it. It's like, yeah, exactly. Where it's like, I feel like it's different for a sexual experience. Like you come out of it. I mean, obviously, maybe it's different for certain people. But like you come out of it in a different mindset. Where like I feel like for jacking off for me when I used to. It was like I was like, okay, I just wasted my time. Like, what the fuck am I doing? Because it's literally like what they're saying, it's post-nut clarity, which is a fascinating thing because it's like everyone just needs to be in the post-nut clarity state. Because I know after that, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I need to go do something productive.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
It's like one, I just wasted my time there. Two, now I'm like, okay, now I'm hyper like motivated to go do something.
Exactly.
I just literally screwed myself. But then I was gonna. Oh, one thing that I forgot to touch on that I wanted to touch on about OnlyFans and porn real quick before we segment, and then I wanted to segment into how this relates to dopamine. But one thing I wanted to say, because I forgot to say it, was I feel like a lot of people, podcasts, influencers, average people, focus so much on, oh, it's the creators that are making these problems. It's the creators. I mean, you can see, I forget the name of the podcast, where he has like the guy and there's a bunch of girls around him.
What is it, the Fresh and Fit, or is it whatever?
It's whatever.
Yeah.
Like I mean, but like a lot of it is like, I mean, and it's so funny because you've got guys that are like, yeah, bro, you're right, and then they'll go feed into it the exact same, and they'll just hate on the girls. So it's literally they'll keep their lifestyle and then just hate on the girls, even though they're feeding into the lifestyle. It's like they focus so much on that, like not degrading, but like making the people that are creating the content feel bad, like it's their problem, as if it's not, as if they should be making the people that are indulging in the content feel bad, because like we said, it's the market.
Yeah, if there is no, well, like with anything, if there is no demand for a product or a service, then there will be no service or product, because then there's no market. It's only possible because there are people who want to feed into it so heavily. And then I think that we can kind of segment that into dopamine, and how dopamine and the ability to create a long-term focus is fleeting, evidently, and it's at a scary rate.
Well, and that's because, I mean, porn, you're getting instant gratification. Those dopamine receptors are going crazy. So we're talking about jacking off, but also just in general, loop back, go off the porn subject, back to just even normal social media, dude. Like, I mean, you've got like TikTok, Instagram Reels, all these that are like short form content. I mean, you got to think about how information used to go down, like, right? So you would go from newspapers to then news on the TV to then shows to then YouTube to then Vine and TikTok, and now you're in those short form contents where you are indulging in so much content so rapidly, just swiping. Like you gotta think, like, instead of watching a TV show for an hour, right, in that hour you can probably hit 30 categories of stuff,
bro. More
than that, literally, from just swiping. And it's crazy. I mean, we're just frying our dopamine receptors.
It's so scary, and I think that a lot of people aren't even aware of this. It was funny enough, I had this conversation with a friend of mine recently. You'll know who I'm talking about, or at least I think you might. I don't want to call anybody out because they'll probably be watching this. But we were at breakfast and we were talking about how they were talking about how much time that they spend on Instagram Reels and TikTok and all that different stuff. And every time they had said something, it was always the short form content version of it. And I remember just thinking, and when we were talking about it, I think they said they spent something like 8+ hours on it.
Jeez, a day.
Yeah, on a day. And
it's funny. The thing is, though, is that's like the average.
Yeah, that's
like
the scary
that is
thing.
Like normal.
That's a scary thing to think about. That's average. And then you have to think about, right, 8 hours out of your day. How much normally within the day do you have, right? Normally maybe 16. So you're spending 8 sleeping. Ideally, obviously, you're getting proper sleep. Let's do someone who's getting proper sleep, right? 8 hours of sleep. Then you're spending another 8 out of that on just destroying your ability to create long-term focus, right? And then after that, what else are you going to have on there, right? Well, this person was in school, so they're in school, right? But then
eating,
yeah.
Like hour.
So hour and a half, depending on how
pretty much your whole entire day.
Yeah, it's pretty much your whole entire day is shat down the toilet, and instead of having 8 hours being put towards productivity and being a better version of yourself. Not saying that everyone wants to do that. We're not telling you have to be, but ideally this podcast is based on that. We're going to try to incentivize you guys to be that way. But I remember just thinking, how do you focus? How do you, at least they were somewhat self-aware of their ability, what they're doing to themselves. But again, they were aware, yet they did not want to change, right? I think,
Yeah.
at least me personally,
That's the hardest
that's
switch
the
for people.
scariest thing,
It's good. Sorry to cut you off, but I was saying a lot of people are not. There's some people that can't even recognize. Recognize.
No,
it.
I'm not
And then there's a
addicted.
lot of-
I swear I'm not.
Exactly.
But
And
then
then there's a lot of people that can recognize it but don't want to make the change. And I feel like it goes back into the thing, and I talk about this a lot, is people don't like making change, especially when it's things that they like, until it gets too bad.
Yeah.
And the problem is when it gets too bad, it's too late.
Oh, most
Majority of the
definitely.
time. You can take that into any circumstance. Majority of the time, when it gets too bad, where you are finally gonna have to change, it's too late, or it's worn you down so much to the point where it's like I said, you can think about it like this. Like if I was thinking about, okay, I'm spending a third of my day, right, every single day just on my phone for 10 years, right? Think about how much time that would add up.
Dude, this is so funny you said that. One, I also don't have like TikTok. I don't have any of the major like short form social medias. I have Instagram, but I do my very best to not be on that. And what I have too is something that's really helped me as much as I'm a human. I'll have faults. I have vices. I try to stay off Instagram Reels, but I got this blocking app that blocks certain apps, and it set a time limit for my work time. So I'm like, all right, don't do this. I'm not going to be consuming this this media, right? And what they do too is you put in your average amount on your social media, all this, you put on the apps you want to block, all this different stuff, right? And it gives you exactly how much you would have spent on there and how much you're going to save. And it's crazy. I think even myself, I spend at most, I spend 3 hours a day on my phone, but I spend maybe 45 minutes of that on Instagram over my whole day. I use the rest for like working, networking, all that different stuff. But they said it was something like 16 years I would have spent on my phone.
Wow.
If you really added up day to day. And it's disgusting.
And that's what people need to see, because like those are big things that like I feel like would help people to start realize that stuff too.
Most definitely.
And I think that's one of the best things is like you have that opportunity for the screen time thing. I know for my TikTok, I used to be way more addicted to TikTok than I am now, but I just slowly started working down the screen time. And then eventually, I know there's plenty of people that will click the screen time thing and just like be like, oh no, ignore for the day.
Yeah.
Even then, at least you're getting the notification and you have to somewhat feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Like, at least for me, like if I'm really that lazy and I click the ignore, because like I said, it happens. Like, there's some people that do it all the time. I try my best to like not, but even the times where I do, I'm like, damn, bro.
Yeah, what did I just do? Yeah.
Definitely should have done that shit.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that goes into, again, it's the self-reflection. It's recognizing and being conscious of your actions. I think that's something that Max and I have really talked on. And we talk about this a lot, is even with your Instagram and your TikTok or whatever you're doing, it removes the cognitive consciousness a lot of the times of what you're doing and realizing your actions in the moment. You're just, because a lot of the times it's just you, well, one is destroying your long-term dopamine or ability to create long-term focus, but as well, a lot of people aren't conscious on what they're doing. They're just scrolling, they're consuming, and then after the fact, they're like, oh, well, it's 6, I need to eat. All right, I ate. I'm going to go lay in bed. Back to TikTok.
Yeah.
And it's like, June, at least me personally, if I was ever in that scape, maybe 5 minutes in, I'd be like, where did that 5 minutes go?
Yeah.
It was wasted. It was into the abyss of nothingness. And then it was literally like just brain rot. You're rotting your brain. That's just me personally. And I understand some people don't want to change, but I don't know. When that's something that's scary, what Max and I are talking about is the removal of thought within action. Or the same thing with jacking off. People, it's just an innate reaction to their, as soon as they get any sense of like need for sexual pleasure, they just go instead of thinking, wait, one, where is that coming from?
Yeah.
Why do I feel this need to just, it's an innate feeling to want to procreate.
Yeah.
But just why pour my instant outlet? Would it not be, let me go for a run, or let me go talk to a girl, so then I do have like a positive physical outlet for that rather than just my hand, So, and I think the same thing happens with social media, or needs to happen, where people realize, why do I feel this way? Oh, it's because I'm not fulfilled on my day-to-day basis. What can I do to do that? What are things that I could do in that time period? I think if a lot of people took I don't think, I know if even 60% of the people who spent 8 hours plus on their phone and they dedicated that to even an 2 to 3 hours to like maybe researching to make money, researching the things that they really want to do in life, those people would go so much farther and they'd be able to be, I'd want to say tenfold farther than they are now.
Yeah, it's just small changes you have to make over time.
Of course.
And like I was gonna say, the biggest thing like with that and like everything we're talking is a lot of social media takes you away from your own life. And a lot of it is because, I mean, you've got these influencers and these like think about the Kardashians and everything and all the and all the TikTokers that are really well known. Like people are so fascinated with other people's lives. It's actually kind of crazy to me. And I can understand it. I see why. I mean, it's a lot of drama. People love drama. It's the whole reason why people watch TV and watch shows too. But eventually, like, it's like you're focusing so much on someone else's life. I mean, I could talk about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, and almost every single one of you would know decently something about when I say that. And it's two people we will never meet. Two people we will never meet, and we know that much about their life. Like, and obviously they hide a lot of this shit, but it's like the fact that we know so much about these people and their names and about their lives. And so much of our time and focus that's gone into that, it's like it definitely pulls you away from your own life.
Well, exactly, and I think that can be good and bad in the sense of I mean, Max and I were funny enough talking about this as the escapes from reality. Obviously, you're gonna need. I also don't think you should ever escape from reality. Reality is amazing, the good and the bad. You need the bad so that the good feels as good as it does. It's the duality. It's life, but. It's really insane to me, and exactly Max and I have talked about it. I personally can't conceive it. I mean, when I was younger, I would kind of watch it. Even then, I'd be like, okay, that's cool. Like they have a cool car, or they're part of the Chargers or something. But I'm like, all right, I'm getting back to my life. I got money to make. I got stuff to do. But then there's like even I know people personally, and I think you'll know who I'm talking about. Like with the Kardashians, this person is so obsessed with them, and she watches every single thing that they're doing, and she'll ask me, do you see this with the Kardashians? I'm like, fuck no, I got my own life. I got stuff I need to do. Again, and I think it goes back into the fact, obviously you're going to need to have outlets so that you have fun and everything. Your life's not just work, unless you love work. Me personally, I kind of do. I love work. But when you get so caught up in other people's lives, it makes you forget about your own, which some people feel like that, but you need to remember you have your own life. And at the same time, if you have fulfilling enough things on your day-to-day life, and your day is so filled with things that are going to make you feel content at the end of the day, you're not going to feel the need to go on Instagram or watch somebody. Like, dude, at the end of my day, or when I have the outlets within my day, I'm not going to go look and watch the Kardashians. I'm going to go play with my dog. I'm going to go spend it with my actual family. Why would I watch someone else's family when I have my own? I have a loving and caring one that wants to be with me. Why would I want to be with someone else's? That's just me personally. And again, we're not knocking you guys, or me personally, I'm not knocking you. But it just is somewhat asinine in my eyes.
Oh, yeah. And it's crazy how much like that is like an average now, like how much people submerge themselves in it. And I mean, we talk a lot about like all the bads of social media. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious because not a lot of people are talking about the bads. There's also so many goods to it. I mean, like we were saying before with like good goals and motivation and idolizing people, like there is a lot of benefits you can get from it. Like you said, finding certain people with lifestyles and interests and goals that you have that have completed them, like to be able to take knowledge from them and understand their lifestyle and things like that to then work towards. And then also marketing, straight up, dude. Marketing is so amazing on these platforms because people are consuming it all the time. It's crazy the different. Now, this type of marketing also goes into the shorter form. Like everyone's doing shorter form. Peter and I were literally just talking about in the car. There's this guy on TikTok that I see, like, I swear every single time I open my phone that literally is just saying the same thing over and over again to try to pitch his thing. But it's probably true because he needs to say the same thing because people are just going to swipe right past it. So he wants to get every single person that literally, even if they're on it for a second, to hear what he's saying just for a chance that he gets a tap on his product.
Most definitely.
And it makes sense. But so, yeah, for marketing. And then also the last thing, which is what we're trying to do, is the outreach and inspiration, which is like, I feel like is one of the most amazing things about social media. The fact that you can literally pull up your phone, which most people have a phone, can literally record a video and post it and anybody in the world can see it is such an amazing tool that I even take for granted, and a lot of people do, dude.
Most
like
definitely.
a lot of people take that shit for granted, that you have that ability in your power, just literally in your pocket. And that's why Peter and I wanted to make this podcast, because we were having these talks that I think maybe some people could benefit from, and even at the least, like, Peter and I are benefiting from having.
Course.
So we're like, why not just like put it out there and see? And I know for me, like, there's been a lot of influences that I see that, like, especially people that like travel the world, do like solo traveling and all that, camera work, photography, that I'm like, wow, like, that is awesome. If that's gonna inspire me to want to be able to put out content like that.
Of course. And then again, like what we said at the beginning of this podcast, we want to go into the nuances. We don't want to talk about all the bad, even though there's a lot of it. There is a good amount of good too.
Oh, yeah.
And again, and something we want to say too, kind of what we're touching on self-reflection and being conscious of your actions. It's up to the individual, and whoever the individual is listening to this, it's up to you to make the decision. You can see the bullshit, you can see the shit on top of the diamond, right? And it's either up to you if you want to brush off the shit, wash it off, and get that diamond, right? And I'm meaning in the sense of all the crap that's on social media, all the negativity, the false diversity trying to make us farther from each other than we already are, even though 99% of us align on a lot of stuff. That's a crazy thing we'll touch on later.
Yeah.
But it's so amazing that you can have all that. It's up to your fingertips. It's up to you. And I think that's something we kind of touched on a little bit, is that decision to have, or realizing the choices in your palms, and it's only up to you, is either a liberating or it's a scary reality, right?
Yeah.
It's something that is going to either make you incite mass action, which personally did for myself, where I'm like, okay, wait, I can achieve everything I've wanted to. Again, seeing people who told me on social media and realizing, hey, they got to this point by this, blah, 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 blah. It's an amazing and a liberating feeling, or it's a scary one.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, okay, if you don't have the accountability, you're like, oh, crap, well, it's up to me. And the last thing I want to touch on really quick is the networking aspect too. It's so amazing that you can talk to someone maybe in a league's higher position than where you're at, and possibly get into contact with them and maybe do a brand deal, or you can get a mentorship from them, or you can even just
get a text back about a question that you had.
Exactly. I was literally just gonna say that. It's so amazing, and it's groundbreaking. I remember thinking about real quick about how, if you were to explain to someone social media 20 years ago, even when there was technology, it would sound like the greatest thing ever. I can share pictures. I can have my friend in Malaysia I met on a trip 5 years ago be able to see what I'm doing now in New York. That's insane. I think that to most people that would sound like the greatest thing ever, and yet we've taken it so heavily for granted. But like most groundbreaking things, it becomes normalized and it just becomes second nature.
Yeah, like you were saying, it's one of those things that we just naturally take for granted now. It's sad because there's so many benefits of it, but like we said, wrapping back to it, at the end of the day, it's really just self-evaluation. How you use social media, and it's no matter what content is out there, because there's always going to be good content, there's always going to be bad content. It's how you take it in and how you view it, for whether it's positive or negative to yourself. And yeah, I mean, I think obviously there's so much we can talk about with this, with social media. I bet almost every single one of our podcasts will probably go into it a bit, because it is a massive part of the society and world today, and especially our generation. I mean, our generation is so heavily impacted by social media that I bet almost every single one of our podcasts are going to go into that.
It's so crazy how interconnected it is into our day-to-day lives, and even if you don't even realize it, it's crazy. We'll get into it so heavily. It's gonna be something we touch on time and time again. And again, we want to, with each time that we do, we want to distill down our consensus to it, and we also want to, again, explain the nuances of it. Every time we talk about the bad, we want to pair it with the good, and how even if there is bad, maybe you can tweak it to be good in your position.
Just like in anything when you're viewing it, right? Like, if you have something bad, you got to figure out how you can evaluate that, how you can change it, how you can make it good. It's the biggest, like, that diagram that probably everyone's seen. It's like something's bothering you. Can you do something about it? Yes, then do something. Can you do something about it? No. Then why is it that big of a deal?
Exactly.
It's one of those things.
Most definitely.
And yeah, like I said, I think we'll probably dive back into the social media like almost every single podcast from now on. And if you guys have any questions, I bet this is something that I bet a lot of you guys would have questions or certain topics you want us to dive back in on. Peter and I in the future, maybe after a couple more podcasts, are planning on maybe doing a Q&A.
Yeah.
So hit us with your questions either in the comments, text us individually. I know a lot of our viewers are naturally people that know us.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions directly that you would want answered or any certain topics that you would want us to either talk about on a full podcast or talk about in a Q&A, hit us up and let us know.
Well, yeah, what I was going to want to say too is if you'd ever want to reach out to us and have a message or just maybe a small conversation, let us know your thoughts, queries, concerns, compliments. You want to tell us we're the worst people in the world and we need to be put in jail? Fine, do it. Thank you for telling us. But you can message us on Instagram at mindset.merge and we'll respond as soon as possible. And we'll respond like you're our best friend. We'll never meet you with anything less than what we would treat each other with. And I don't want you guys to ever hesitate to reach out because we're more than happy. If anything, we want you guys to let us know. Give us the feedback. Exactly what the name is exactly up here, right?
Yeah, the nice
these are
banner.
our 2 brains we want. Yeah, this is also something too. We were kind of subtle about. We didn't want to go too hard and flex on you guys, but. New banner, but exactly as the name entails, it's mindset merge. And then not just our 2 mindsets, we want yours to merge with ours. We want this to be as the world is, which is something we'll talk about some other time about how every thought we have, and especially the ones that we specifically have, we understand that it's a cohesive compilation of all the different experiences and different mindsets and different thoughts from other people, right? And so exactly that, we want you guys to say to us what you think so that we can get a better understanding of our viewers' perspectives and as maybe ourselves, because you're going to learn from other people. And that's what we want us to do, and hopefully you guys do as well. I'm not saying that we have every answer, not saying you do, but exactly that, maybe we can find the answer together.
And it all wraps back to that thing, and this is definitely a podcast that we'll do fully on this topic, but it's never black and white for certain people's views. It's never your opinion or your experience, because everyone, like we said, builds their own opinions from your experiences. But being able to then all come together as a group and talk about our different views on certain subjects allows not only to come to almost a it doesn't even have to come to a consensus, but sometimes it will come to a consensus about an idea.
Well, maybe the consensus is we agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And that's something great in of itself. Sorry.
100%. And then also, it can be something where it's like, okay, now I have a different view about this topic from somebody that's seen it differently.
Exactly.
From somebody that has a different walk of life. Even if we grew up in the exact same town, I know, even my boys that were in the same friend group, I know we have different views on life in certain ways because we've experienced life in different ways still, even though there's a lot of similarities.
Exactly.
So that's why we love to hear your guys' feedback.
Well, I think that's something, and this is going to be at least the last bit from me on the actual topic, but I think it's something that's so beautiful in of itself is the ability to, speech in of itself is beautiful, and we can talk about that later, but the ability to come to a common consensus, again, even if the common consensus is, hey, we agree to disagree, and that's something beautiful, saying, hey, we both know that we have our own views, but we were able to put it down to the cutting board, cut down each other's, really test each other's opinions, and we're both still steadfast and firm in them, right? But then it's also beautiful if you can both come to a consensus. Hey, I understand I understand the way you think that you do, and you understand the way I think that I do, and we both came out getting a little piece of each other's pie. But that's something we'll talk about more and more. But again, we just want to let you know that we're always open to feedback, and we're honestly inviting of it, as you've seen in this last minute we talked about it. Again, I think that Max and I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who's watching.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of the people that are going to be watching are people that know us and that we've outreach to it. But I think that we do have some new viewers, and we're hoping that you guys are enjoying the podcast as it's going, even though this is our second one. We have some really big things planned for it. We don't want to tease anything that's not. We don't want to bite too much off than we can chew.
Yep.
But we have some stuff in the works, and you'll see that in the teasers if you're on the Instagram. Again, it's going to be mindset.merge if you want to follow up. And I guess we'll just see you guys in the next podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yep. See you guys. Have a good one.
Yeah.